Somewhere in the body, we are struggling with either what we're being exposed to from the environment, which could include food, or internally the organs that are managing this are not performing at their best. Hi, it's Dr. Casoni. Today we're going to talk about acne. Now, in order to get into this conversation, we have to review two important dynamics in the body. One of those dynamics is going to involve the hormone system, and the other one is going to involve the detoxification system. Now, it's important when we're talking about detoxification and elimination that we're not getting confused with any bogus claims of whether or not it exists or what we're trying to do to detoxify the body for something that may or may not be relevant to any particular part of health. There certainly are a lot of scams out there. However, detoxification in its simplest terms refers to eliminating particulates or unwanted chemicals or debris that we're exposed to in the environment, right? We have our barriers, the skin, our lungs, we have our GI tract when we ingest something. Once it gets past the barriers, it's going to go into the bloodstream and the liver is going to end up neutralizing it. And that is our filtration. Much less like a filter, actually, and much more like a sewage treatment center. But nonetheless, the concept is very similar, that we're capturing unwanted particulates, we're neutralizing them, and then they're going to be excreted out through the kidneys and the urine or back down into the GI tract and eliminated through the feces. So this is the basics of detoxification. If there's a failure in any of those pathways, we will have an unwanted and unnecessarily high exposure to those contaminants, which then can cause problems in the rest of the body or some degree of biological interruption. And so that's relevant to acne. The other part of detoxification you have to consider is that we generate our own waste. Regular cell metabolism is generating waste. That waste has to be carried out by the blood, back to the liver, cleaned up again, and then sent out through the urine and feces, just like we discussed. And if there's any impairment in that exchange and that transport pathways or breakdown elimination pathways, then once again, we can be exposed to a higher than normal level of toxic or irritating debris throughout the body. So if we're going to support detoxification, many people are thinking, oh, I need to detoxify. But going back to the physiology of the body, we want to be thinking of the systems that do that for us. And so our main strategies are always going to be helping the body do the work. Otherwise, we're back into drug territory, pharmacology, and that can be very useful, but there's always going to be a higher cost because you're damaging the body to get the result. Versus if we're supporting normal function and we're at the same time eliminating maybe environmental causes, then we get some great success that way. Okay, so of those two dynamics, the hormone system and the detoxification system, let's get into the hormone system first. So when we talk about the hormone system or the endocrine system, right? So hormone and endocrine is the same thing. Medically, we often use the word endocrine system, but it refers to hormone producing glands in the body. A hormone is simply a messenger molecule that's going to tell some other body what to do and when to do it. That's what a hormone is. So the study of that would be endocrinology, right? Because we're dealing with the endocrine glands and the hormones produced by them. So we have within that, we have a lot of different subcategories. We have autocrine, paracrine, exocrine, and exocrine is what we're going to look at. And in a category, in that subcategory, are cells called holocrine cells. Very interesting. The holocrine cell is producing a product like your hormone producing glands. And this product, like for example, in the face, is going to do a number of different functions. One, it's going to protect the face and make it look good, like sebum and all your healthy oils. Those are produced by the facial holocrine cells. But also, it's going to be protective, right? We're going to be look better and we're going to be protected. And then these holocrine cells, the word holo, almost like holistic, the whole thing, refers to some degree of the cell itself is coming out in the product. Kind of interesting. So if we look at our picture here, here's our skin, and then we have our pore here, right? And then we have a product here. We have, and then a little bit of the cell itself is coming out with it. And so that is a self-exfoliating system. And as long as this pathway out is open, then we don't have the acne, right? That has to be open. And so what we have here is that our detox pathways, right? So detoxification pathways are challenged somewhere in the body. Somewhere in the body, we are struggling with either what we're being exposed to from the environment, which could include food, or internally the organs that are managing this are not performing at their best. And so let's look at our picture here. What we're going to have is more junk coming through the cells, right? And that is because if we go back to our primary detox pathways, right? Number one is going to be the liver and the gut system and the kidneys we can put in there. But number two in our detox pathways, if the first is compromised, we're just under functioning with the liver, the gut, or the kidneys, then we're going to go into secondary detox pathways. And this is going to involve the skin and or the lungs. And you could think of alcohol consumption, actually. We all know alcohol is a poison to the body and that the liver is going to dismantle it. So somebody drinks some alcohol, their liver's going to neutralize it as best it can, and then it will excrete it out through the kidneys and the urine. That's the design. However, if they drank too much alcohol, so the external burden of irritation is greater than the internal ability of that liver, what's going to happen is we're going to have the secondary pathways challenged, right? And that's where you go to your friend's house and they drank too much the night before, and you walk into their room in the morning and you can smell alcohol in the air. What's happening is it's now coming out through their lungs and through their sweat. They're basically getting it out. And that's where we can see acne coming in. So we go back to our picture, we've got all of this extra junk because the secondary pathways are enacted. And if this exit route is still working and still open enough, then there's still no acne, but maybe now the person has to work at it. Maybe they have to help clean their face and keep those pores open, get some skincare, something like that. So, but let's go a little bit further. We have our failed detox pathways, and now we're coming out through the skin, but let's add the hormone contribution here. So if we have an increased anabolic hormone, right? Anabolic means growth. Think of like the bodybuilders taking anabolic steroids, they're getting growth. But relevant to acne, we're looking at two main hormones here. So here we go. Now we have anabolic hormones. And if we look at our cell here, that would be like having a whole bunch of extra activity going on here, right? It's almost like we stepped on the gas pedal and now there's a greater amount of junk coming out through the cell and a higher rate of turnover. And that is definitely going to be a problem, trying to get all of that out through that pathway, that exit pathway. And now we're going to be prone to irritation, inflammation, and then we're going to start up the infection, which is actually the acne. And so now we're getting into our problems here. We have greater effort trying to keep that open. And if we go into our tertiary or third detox pathway, that is going to be cystic development. And so a cyst, if you think about it, is kind of like an oyster, and a piece of sand goes into the oyster, and then the oyster develops the pearl. as a protective mechanism. Well, the body does something similar. If it can't get rid of something and its other pathways are already impaired, then it's just going to seal it up. It's a protective mechanism. And so that cystic development showing up in the ovaries, the breasts, on the skin, or other parts of the body is going to have at least these two pathways: the failed detox system, which can also include an increased environmental aspect, and then also the hormone system. Now, the two hormones that are responsible for that anabolic push are typically going to be insulin and or testosterone. Some have both. Now, insulin, that person is going to have blood sugar stability symptoms. They're going to be craving carbohydrates because their blood sugar levels are unstable, right? A very healthy person should be able to go back and forth between burning sugars and fats all day long. And if their body's doing that, there's no spike and drop to their energy levels. But if they're starting to become broken in that management, where they're relying on the carbohydrates, they're not switching to fats, which are very stable, what's going to happen is they're going to have fluctuating energy levels, and every crash they have, every peak and valley, they're going to be craving carbohydrates because they're basically in a fuel deficit. So these main symptoms are fluctuating energy levels, cravings for carbohydrates. It becomes advanced if there is tired after eating. That's reactive hypoglycemia. The body's overreacting because now they're irritated by the carbohydrates. Insulin is going up. There's your anabolic hormone, insulin. Insulin is going up because now the carbohydrates are staying in the blood vessels too long, causing inflammation. The insulin takes it all out of there. The person's going to either start getting fat, and maybe disproportionately to their intake. Maybe they're not eating that much, but they're gaining weight, or they're going to start urinating out. So they're urinating more. They might even be more thirsty. Advanced would be they're waking up at night to urinate, which could include even more advanced calf cramps because they're dehydrating their body to flush out the irritants from their blood vessels, which is the sugars, and then even urinary tract infections. As that whole pathway is getting irritated over time, it's now vulnerable to infections. But it started with peeing out the sugars and irritating the body that way, because you're peeing out the sugars because your blood vessels are inflamed. More symptoms of that could be the tired after eating we discussed, but also could be the person eats and they know they're full and they're not satiated. They still want a snack because this whole cascade of reactive hypoglycemia is happening. As they're eating, their body's pushing too much insulin. The fuel isn't all going into the furnace. It's now being removed and put into the fat or peed out. And so they're crashing a little bit. So they're still hungry. This kind of stuff going on. So now the other main hormone would be testosterone. So testosterone is a talent, if you will. It's great for metabolism. A lot of times these individuals will be more muscular, but not always, especially in the females. It's like they're muscular, but they don't even really exercise and their friends are envious. Well, that's great. Good for athletics. So testosterone is very anabolic, makes things grow. And in this case here, it's going to create that turnover in the cell. Other symptoms of the elevated testosterone might be greater acne, could be hair on the chin. Insulin in higher amounts can cause hair on the chin as well. But both of those hormones can be related to the development of ovarian cysts, which we're going to talk about that in another video. So the insulin producing person would need to lower their carbohydrates and possibly address the vascular inflammation that has occurred, in addition to getting treatment for the liver. The liver is always going to be there. And in the insulin sensitive person, or actually they've become less insulin sensitive, it's not going into the furnace, so they're insulin resistant, right? And that's going to cause the problems here. But part of that is going to be helping the liver from a fuel management aspect. The liver is helping regulate sugars and fats and those fuels being used all throughout the day. So if there's a problem with fuel management, there's maybe a problem with the diet we have to address, but there's also something going on with the liver in addition to the detox pathways. Now, with the testosterone pushing person, it's always going to be the liver because they just don't have to work on the diet as much. But for the elevated testosterone, the liver should be dismantling any excess hormones, stress hormones, so that we can sleep better, and also even excess anabolic hormones. The liver is going to neutralize those hormones. Otherwise, long term, you could be prone to other problems of growth out of control. Cancers, things like that, could theoretically be triggered by higher growth rates that the brain is not controlling. Well, the liver is there to safeguard us from any of that. And so for that testosterone pusher, we're still going to work on the liver. Anyways, I hope this gives you some insight into the background mechanism of acne. And in treatment, typically we might be looking at the dietary changes while we're supporting at least the liver, looking for problems in the gut that also might be contributing to the liver. You have to remember, 22 feet of the small intestines is filtering, but it's also sending everything it filtered to the liver. So if you're not filtering all the way, you're going to send excess particulates that should have been, removed out through the feces are going into the blood. This is the leaky gut concept. So if you have gut issues, you're going to have liver issues. So now for that person, we're treating the liver, we're treating the gut. Is there infections in the gut? This is why I can't just advise random herbs or treatments. There does need to be some individualization, but it's very important to start thinking through the areas. We don't want the natural thing for acne. We want to look at the cause of the acne in the individual. So far we have the themes of liver, and that's the primary detox pathways, the gut system, if that's involved, the vascular inflammation, if it's a carbohydrate sensitive person, and also the rest of the picture, no matter what is going on, if there's infections or anything else, because truly anything can cause anything. These are just some main clinical pearls as to causation. Enjoy the rest of your day.